So you have a Mustang that you want to lower it, but you daily drive it. Well, this video is just for you. All right, so here is my 2019 Mustang GT that you can tell is lowered, and I've been daily driving this car for about 2 years with these lowering springs. So I figured I'd make a video to kind of help out some of the buyers over there who want to lower their daily driver, but they're concerned with the ride quality and just practicality of just driving a lowered car. Now I'm going to cover what I have on this car, what setup I went with lowering springs, the wheels and tires, and also cover some of the practicality aspects and the ride quality just if it's your daily driver. Of course, if it's just a weekend car, it doesn't matter as much, but if you're commuting and the roads aren't the greatest where you live, this video is going to be important for you because last thing you want to do is get some lowering springs and find out that they're not really comfortable and you have to swap them out again. All right, so this is how the car currently sits. We are on steeda lowering springs, which has these are their progressive lowering springs, the most common setup out there. This will lower your car about 1.1 inch in the front and about 1 inch in the back. It gives a very nice look. As you can see, I do have some wider tires, 285s in the front and 285 in the back, which is why you can kind of see it gives a more of a stance look from this angle, as you can see. But if you go with even your stock tires, it will still look pretty good. Let's take a look at the fender gap on here. So you can see about a couple fingers. So you can kind of measure it if you currently have a stock vehicle. And that's in the front. And for the rear, it's about that much too. Just a couple fingers right here, you can see. So it lowers it about an inch. When it was stock, it was, I want to say, about 3 to 4 fingers gap in terms of the ride height. So it definitely improved, and the stance is much nicer with these lowering springs, and it also helps if you get some meatier tires like I did with the 285s. It just looks so good. But of course, if it's your daily driver, then you have to consider some practicality aspects too, and you just can't worry about making the car look good, and if it's not comfortable, what's the point? Like I said, I've been daily driving this car. I want to say I've put on about 20,000 miles or so on these springs. With this whole setup, I've got about 20,000 miles, so I've had pretty good seat time daily driving it, city, highway, road trips, you name it. I've done it all on this Mustang. That's what I love about these cars. They're powerful car that you can daily drive if you wanted to. Now with the looks out of the way, as you can see the way it sits, it looks really good. Everything is kind of what you would want it to be in terms of stance life. If you do want to get a little bit more stance, you could go with iBox Sportline, but there's a reason why I didn't go for those, because I daily drive this car, and iBox Sportlines will lower your car about 1.5 inch in the back and also the front as well. So it's much lower than what this setup would be. Of course, it's going to look much nicer, but I wanted to strike a balance between daily drivability and looks. If you're going with a mild setup like the one I have, which I don't know if you can really call it mild because it looks really good. I mean, look at this angle. It looks so good with the lowering springs, wider tires. It's much better than the factory. So if you go with a setup like mine, it doesn't have to be steeda, although I do recommend steeda for obvious reasons because they've held up fine for me. And the price point is really good on them. But if you go with these, the ride quality, honestly, is pretty much the same compared to stock. And this is something that a lot of people are surprised by when I say that the ride quality hasn't really gone downhill since I've gotten the lowering springs. steeda has done a great job, and I'm not sponsored by them, but they have done a great job in terms of making these springs where they should be, in terms of the balance of the looks that everyone's after, but also have some practicality where you're not just completely slammed and just having a really bad ride quality that it just starts hurting your back and it's just not plain fun. All right, so I don't want to just sugarcoat it and say it's pretty much like the stock, because we know if you're lowering a car, the ride quality has to get worse. And it did, but not really. And the reason I say that, because I just want to be completely honest, I would say compared to the stock Mustang, or I had the non-performance pack, so I had like the stock springs and everything, it's maybe 10% worse. You'll really feel it if you've got really bad roads and constant bumps that you're hitting. Maybe it's 10% worse, but honestly, you won't be able to tell. It's not something that is just so bad where you got on it, you get the springs installed, and you're like, what the heck is this? And it's not fun. This is maybe 10% worse, but believe me, you're not gonna be able to tell unless you're specifically looking for that. So of course, ride quality is one of the main things, but ride quality aside, there's another aspect to consider when you're lowering your car is the practicality. Is it gonna be too low where it's gonna be hitting everything and you're going to parking garages, or you're going to like speed bumps, it's just scraping everything? If you have a nice front splitter, it's gonna scrape that. So that's something I wanna tackle next. So this is how the car sits right now. I don't have any front splitter. I guess I have the stock one, but I don't have the extension like the Performance Pack 2 would have, or the Mach 1. And you can kind of see it's still got a good bit of clearance with this angle. It's got a decent bit of clearance with it. The lighting is much better here, so you can kind of see it still has really good clearance on that. Now, if you were to get a Performance Pack 2 extension or the Mach 1 style, or any splitter that acts as like one of those, I guess, double chin where it sticks, you know, on the bottom of this, it might be an issue. And that's one of the reasons I haven't gone with a front splitter, although I really wanted to really get the aggressive front look. But it's just been very difficult to justify that, because I have a feeling I'll spend all that money on a front splitter and I'll end up just scraping it. So I've been very careful with it. I really want it, but it's been difficult to assess it. Although I would say the car is not too low, and you can probably get by with a front splitter to still get an aggressive look for the front end of your Mustang. You just have to be careful, maybe measure it before you commit to it. Otherwise, I think it's fine. Me personally, I just haven't gotten around to measuring it properly, so I'm just not sure what the result would be. And last thing I'm gonna do is spend $200 on a front splitter that I'm just scraping everywhere. So, which brings us to the next question. Like, if you're driving this around in, you know, parking lots where you've got bumps, like the one we've got right here, how does it hold up? Well, to be honest with you, I haven't scraped it at all. In 2 years I've driven it, about 20,000 miles. I have not scraped this Mustang at all on these steeda lowering springs, which really kind of speaks to it. It's a lowered car, but it's not too low, and I feel like it's a perfect daily setup where you can enjoy the car without worrying too much about it. Of course, if there's a big speed bump, you have to be slightly careful. But I haven't encountered any instances where I have to do basically angled approach to not slam the bottom of the car or the front splitter. So, should you get a lowering springs on your daily driven Mustang? I say absolutely yes. Just be careful of which springs you're going with. It is tempting to get a very slammed look and get the lowered look with the iBox sport lines and even some of the SR performance springs, which will give you, you know, even more of a lowered look. But as you can see, even though it's only 1 inch drop, and I was kind of concerned with it that it might not have the look that I'm looking for, this is perfect. This is perfect. Like, it looks really good. Again, this is how it looks. It looks very lowered. You can barely tell any, you know, fender gap between the tires and the body. Looks absolutely amazing. And the best perk is that you can daily drive this setup. I haven't had any issues in about 20,000 miles I've driven this car. So to me, it's the perfect balance of getting that lowered stance look, as you can see here, without compromising too much on the daily drivability. Now, of course, if it's not your daily driver, then you can go for even more of a slam look, or even spend more money and get air suspension. But to me, that was not just all worth it in terms of getting the look I was going for with the car and being able to daily drive it. Air suspension can be very expensive, and I don't think it's worth the cost unless it's a show car. So guys, there's your answer. Yes, you can daily drive your Mustang with lower springs without compromising on drivability. Well, maybe 10% drivability, but really you won't notice it. And the look that these springs produce, the Steeda Sport Progressive Springs, is just absolutely amazing. If you want to get lowering springs for your Mustang and you don't want it to be a too slam of a look, this is the perfect setup to get. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure you smash that like button and make sure you subscribe if you haven't done so you can follow this build along.